So hello again, this is Gary Williams at the EFT Hub, exploring the emotional freedom techniques and tapping and many other areas that are important and connected to that. And today I'm sharing some time with Midge Murphy. Hello, Midge.
Hello, Gary.
And thanks for taking time out today to join us. And you're going to help us with a very important subject here, aren't you? Because a lot of people get involved with tapping and EFT and other energy methods and have really got a good heart and they want to get out there and they want to spread the word, but they can fall foul, can't they, of different things. And this is where you come in, isn't it?
Exactly. What I do is I have a PhD in energy medicine. I'm also an attorney, and I've blended the two worlds together to really work about teaching people about the ethics and legal issues and risk management strategies that need to be implemented in order to be successful in terms of offering your healing services to the public, whether it's with EFT or any other kind of energy healing method. So I'm really about empowering my clients to understand what the risks are, because they do exist because of the inherent natural way our legal system works here in the United States in terms of bringing in innovative energy-based types of techniques to the public, which is something that is really cutting edge and not part of mainstream medicine. We hope at some point it will be, and that's our goal, is to be able to integrate something like EFT into the mainstream healthcare field and not have our practitioners being subject to different kinds of legal vulnerabilities.
And a lot of, as I said earlier, a lot of people do really get tripped up with all this, don't they? Because would you say that it's complicated, what needs to be done?
It's extremely complicated because the nature of how our legal system works here in the United States is that every state is different. So depending on which state you're actually practicing in, those laws and regulations that apply to you could be different. For instance, in California, they have a healthcare freedom law, which gives a little bit more maneuverability. It's called a safe harbor law. So if you comply with the law and you make sure you have a proper client informed consent agreement, then you can actually do more energy healing work or healing arts work with people without the threat of being charged with practicing medicine without a license. So I'm really about empowering and protecting practitioners. And what I'm going to talk about specifically at the Northwest Tappers Gathering, which I'm very excited about, with Alina Frank and Craig Weiner, is I'm going to focus on the legalities of marketing yourself as an EFT practitioner in particular. And so some of the topics I'm going to include is really going to be focusing on websites, because just about every EFT practitioner I know has a website. It's a great way to get clients and to get the word out about yourself, but that means you're also exposing yourself to a lot of legal potential problems, mainly because you don't really know what the laws and regulations are that apply to you when you have a website. So some of the things we really want to take a look at and want to be aware of, number one is the Federal Trade Commission. That is a federal regulatory agency that oversees how services and products are marketed and advertised to the public. And interestingly enough, it's not only the federal government that you have to be aware of, but most states have consumer protection laws. And what these laws do is protect consumers from misleading, false advertising, or unfair business practices. And so what most EFT practitioners aren't aware of is that just by nature of what they put on their websites, they could be in violation of Federal Trade Commission rules and regulations, especially when it comes to testimonials and other kinds of claims that you make on your website. So we're really going to take a look at what the FTC laws and regulations are, and you don't want to get a cease and desist letter from the FTC. It's very, very expensive, and basically, and I'm not about creating fear, I'm about empowering, but if you run into a problem with the FTC, basically it's thousands of dollars in fines, and most likely you will lose your practice. So it's important to be aware of the laws and regulations so that you can maneuver through sort of the quagmire of all the legalities of it. And that's what I do. I audit websites for practitioners. I work with a lot of EFT practitioners, tweak the language a little bit so that they are not raising a red flag over their heads by just the language that they use on their websites. So that's kind of one of the topics we're going to talk about. And how you describe your services is really important, because you don't want to run in violation of what your licensing laws are in your states. For instance, as a general rule, things like PTSD and phobias and anxieties are they're called mental health disorders in the United States. And a lot of non-licensed EFT practitioners who are maybe life coaches or wellness coaches or peak performance coaches talk about working with clients who have PTSD. That is really problematic if in that particular state, and in a general rule this would be true, is that you have to be a licensed mental health care professional in order to treat something like PTSD. So a lot of EFT practitioners are just not aware of the nuances of the law and what they can do and what they can't do, because ultimately you could be the most fantastic EFT practitioner in the world, but ultimately your scope of practice and what you can do as an EFT practitioner is defined by law. And that's where people are not aware of what the law is. So that's where I come in educating, empowering, working with clients on their website disclaimers, auditing their websites for content, working with them on client agreements so that they can know that they've reduced their risks as much as possible. And then they're free to go out and do their healing work in the world without sort of that fear and onus of, oh my gosh, am I going to get in trouble? Because the legal consequences are significant. I don't want to diminish those. It's very, very important that you realize that there is a legal system you have to maneuver through in order to do this work. And that's what I'm here to do, to empower people, teach them, learn how, help them with those potential problems that they have in terms of their legal system and what they need to be doing so that they feel, again, just free to go out and do what they need to do.
Right.
Empower them as healers.
So it's really amazing, isn't it, how much damage can be done without you knowing, the rules, as it were.
Yes, unfortunately, that's really the case. I mean, I think there's as we've talked a little bit before, is that I really honor that people come to EFT a lot of times, want to become practitioners because they've had such a wonderful healing experience. And I don't want to diminish that. And I want to honor those folks that want to go out and help other people. And that's wonderful. But we still have to maneuver through the legal and regulatory system that governs how the healing arts are offered to the public. And I'll just give you an example. One is, yes, Roger Callahan, who developed thought field therapy and one of the pioneers in energy psychology. He had a website back in the early 90s. I think he called it the Addictions Breaking System. And it was some kind of a program that he was offering to the public using TFT. And the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, actually investigated him and wrote and issued an order, a cease and desist order, because what he was promoting on his website, he didn't have the scientific evidence to back up the claims that he was making about his product and or his services. This is where it gets really into a conundrum, in that if you have testimonials or make claims on a website about healthcare products or services, the Federal Trade Commission and federal rules and regulations require that those claims must be substantiated by scientific evidence. So what does that mean? In our system, that's like, we're talking about the gold standard. We're talking about, evidence-based, clinical trials, peer-reviewed journals, all of that indicates that this is scientifically proven or substantiated. Unfortunately, since we're a new field and there is great research that is going on around tapping techniques and other energy healing methods, we're not quite there yet. So that's why it's very important to have your website audited, so you don't have to go through what Roger did. He was fined $50,000 and he had to pay all sorts of attorney fees, and they basically shut down his website. That's the worst case scenario. And so what I'm trying to do is teach my clients and anyone who's interested in taking any of my online courses or read my ebooks is to give them some basic general information about these laws and regulations so that they're just more mindful about how they present themselves to the public, because it can create significant legal vulnerabilities and it can stop you from actually doing the work that you really want to do. And so I'm all about empowering you to, let's take care of these risks. You can't eliminate them, you can minimize them. And then you're in a much better position to do that healing work that you want to do with your clients. So
it's clear to me that this is not something that you can just do for yourself. You need to get somebody like yourself in to do that. And also there's been cases, hasn't there, of individuals suing people with websites, for various reasons as well. And a disclaimer is kind of needed there, isn't it, in some way?
That's a great point, Gary. Yeah, that's so true. That would be another part of what I'm going to be talking about at the Northwest Tappers Gathering, and I address that in my ebooks and in my online courses, is that yes, just the language on your website can make you vulnerable to a claim from someone who comes and visits. So any kind of visitor, and it depends on the content of the website and what exactly are you saying and doing. So what I do is when I audit is to make sure that there is a website disclaimer. That's what your best risk management tool is, to have a legal disclaimer for your website. And that really protects you from claims that could be made. For instance, let me give you an example. Let's see. Let's say you have on your website, you're all excited about EFT and you know you've done some great work and you really work well with people who are dealing with chronic pain. And so you put that out on your website and you have testimonials from happy clients that say, gosh, you know, I went to Steve and I had these EFT sessions and now I'm pain free. And so that's kind of the framework. And there are a lot of websites out there that are very much like that. The problem is, depending on how you language that you use, if you say or create an impression, implied or expressed, like you will be pain-free after 4 sessions, then that creates a legal guarantee. And if there's a visitor to your website who reads that and says, wow, I really want to work with this person, and they sign up as a client based on the contents of your website, and they have couple sessions with you and it doesn't go well and they're not pain-free, or maybe it's you're talking about people who are sad or depressed and you go, you know what, I did this EFT and I'm not any happy, in fact I'm sadder. You really misrepresented your services to me, and you have a guarantee on your website that, you know, I'm going to be pain-free, or I'm going to be happy in 4 sessions, or after using EFT I'm going to be, you know, jolly again. This can create a lawsuit for misrepresentation and fraud. So it's not only the federal government or a state licensing board that could potentially go after you, but also a client that comes to you or someone who reads your website can also be a potential legal claimant against you. Another thing that happens, and I'll briefly talk about this, is that there are a lot of EFT websites out there that teach people how to do EFT directly on that website. So when you offer that to people, anyone who would come to your website without the proper disclaimers, then if anyone who comes to your website, and you don't know who's going to show up, could be anybody. And if you get somebody who maybe got some very serious psychological disorders, or maybe they suffer from really extreme PTSD, and they start to tap and it somehow triggers them and they go psychotic or they get suicidal, which could happen, then the fact is you could be held legally responsible for that harm that was suffered by that visitor who came to you, who learned EFT on your website. So it's important to have the proper disclaimers and to let people know if you suffer or you experience any physical discomfort or any emotional distress when you're using EFT, to please stop and make sure you seek professional help so that we're taking care of those folks that come to our website. We don't know what their issues are, what their problems could be, but we don't want to create harm out there just because we haven't let them know that if they are in distress, that they should really seek professional help, or if they have a serious psychological disorder, that they should really go to an EFT practitioner who's also a licensed mental health care professional who can really take care of them. So it's also about being in service to the public as well.
So we're not just talking really about legal issues here, are we? We're talking about a kind of moral code, aren't we, as well?
Yeah, you know, you really can't separate the ethical issues out from the legal issues. They really just interweave with each other, because one of the core psychological concepts in ethics is to be client-centered. And what does that mean? That means that you are really in a space of being fully centered and not projecting your issues onto your client. And if you haven't done your own healing work, then I think it really affects your ability to be a healer. And I think I saw, Gary, on your website something about it's always important to continue to do your own healing work as you're out there also offering your healing services to others. And since I am also an energy healing practitioner, I walk both worlds, and then I have an energy healing practice. I don't necessarily do EFT. I'm not fully trained. I'm well aware of it, and I use it personally for myself. But my background is more in energy healing, such as therapeutic touch. I'm certified in matrix energetics, and I do a lot of shamanic work, and I've also been initiated as a Reiki master. So I'm also speaking from the place of the healer, but I also have this other whole side of myself where I've had this background and training in the ethics and legal issues, and so I can really be a bridge between these two worlds. And so I think that's why I'm uniquely positioned to offer these services to EFT practitioners and other kinds of energy healing practitioners.
I would imagine there's quite a lot of fear, though, coming up for some people now, thinking, I haven't really checked my website in that respect, so they're kind of maybe fearful that there are a few holes, as it were, in what they've constructed there.
Absolutely, and I understand that fear. Here's been my experience. I've been doing this for over a decade. Is that once those fears are faced, once you really take a look at the risk management aspects of your practice and you put into place these strategies that can really help reduce your risk, then you go from a place of fear to a place of empowerment. And I want to kind of pick up on a thread of a thought that you had a little while ago. And the truth is, yes, you're not trained attorneys. You don't understand all about the FTC. There's so many areas you need to research in order to take a look at what's going on in your state, that you really don't have the skills to do that. And so that's where I come in. This is where I can be of service and help to the field of energy medicine and energy psychology, because you're talking about very precise legal documents that need to be drafted specifically for your practice. Sometimes I get people to say, well, don't you just have a generic website disclaimer I can just stick on my website? And the answer is no, because every website is unique. Every practitioner is unique. It's going to depend on the nature and contents of your website that directly relates to what I need to do in order to draft a website disclaimer for you. So everything needs to be customized, especially for your client agreements for services. If you're a licensed healthcare professional, then what I do is draft an informed consent, because those folks don't have the threat of being charged with practicing a licensed profession without a license like a non-licensed practitioner does. But they're using and integrating an innovative energy psychology method into their practice, which could potentially create a liability for them, and that their board could come after them and say, look, what are you doing? This is not a substantiated technique. This is not part of the standards of care, scope of practice as defined in your regulations. And so we're going to subject you to professional discipline for using an unsubstantiated method in your practice. So there's kind of two camps. And I think there's also what I've discovered, and I work with a lot of licensed healthcare professionals, they realize their licenses could be in jeopardy if they don't integrate these techniques that they're wanting to use, because they're so helpful and they know it, and they're willing to say, I know this is not part of mainstream psychology yet, but I know that EFT can help my clients, and I am dedicated to bring it into my practice. Well, let's do it mindfully. Let's do it so that we reduce any risk that you could lose your license because you're doing it. I do know of a case in the East Coast where I think it was a licensed clinical social worker was working not with EFT, but she was working with entities. So it's more of a shamanic kind of intervention in terms of her psychological or psychotherapy practice. Well, she lost her license because she was doing things that weren't part of the standards of care as defined by her regulations for licensed clinical social workers. So it's not like, oh, I'm licensed, I got a free ride. No, you have to be mindful in a different way than you were if you're a non-licensed practitioner. So I work with both, and they have different issues, and yet the ethical part is universal. It doesn't matter where you live. It's really part of how you work with people, how you build rapport, and how you have an ethical framework for your practice that carries you through and takes care of your clients.
I'm sure there's many questions that people at home at the moment are thinking that what they would like to actually ask you as such, and it's such a minefield, isn't it? And unfortunately, in a small interview like this, we don't have lots of time to do that. So maybe we can bring you back at some point and go into some more depth, with the different things. But where would somebody go, say now, what would be their first start in this process of making sure that they are ethical and they have got the relevant things that are required?
Great question. Well, I would really encourage people to go to my website, which is very easy. It's just midgemurphy.com, and I would encourage you to take a look at that. There are a number of free articles on the website that discuss website disclaimers and some other topics that are of interest, and they're free, so I would encourage you to read those. I also have an ebook that I put out last fall that is specific for EFT practitioners. I'm very proud of it. It's called Empower and Protect Your Practice, Ethics, Legal Issues, and Risk Management Strategies for EFT practitioners. And accompanying that, I would encourage people to consider, I also have a certificate course where you basically, it's the ebook with an exam. You get a certificate of completion in this subject, which is a really important professional credential. So that's one step that I would certainly encourage people to take in order to just sort of become more knowledgeable. The other thing that I offer are a different number of risk management packages. And since I've been doing this for over a decade, I love to put together packages of services because I know exactly what you need. I know exactly how much time basically it's going to take me to do that for you. And that way you're not hiring me on an hourly basis. A lot of consultants get hired on an hourly basis. And what I have found over the years is I really like to just offer a package. It's a set price. Then we can talk, I can answer your questions, we can do several drafts of something if that's what you need to do, so that you don't feel reluctant to pick up the phone or send me an email thinking, oh my gosh, if I call Midge or I ask these questions in an email, I'm going to be charged. So I love just having these packages, a flat rate, and that way all the services that are included in the package are all included, and you don't incur any additional expenses for any questions or concerns that you have as we move through the process of doing risk management for you in your practice.
And I know you go to various places, don't you, to teach people more about this. And where are you going next?
Well, next, I'm really excited because it's in my neck of the woods. I'm in Eugene, Oregon, and Alina Frank and Craig Weiner are having their Northwest Tappers Gathering on March 15th at Bastyr University, which is, I think, just a little bit north of Seattle. So I'm very excited to be part of that group. And I also will be presenting at the Association for Comprehensive Energy Psychology at the end of May. And I also do a lot of customized online courses. And so there's lots of information out there, and I'm more than happy to help folks. I also offer free 15-minute consultations. So if you have any questions, please feel free to just drop me an email directly from my website, and we can set up a scheduled appointment to talk for a few minutes about your concerns and see if there's a risk management package or something that I can offer you that can be of help and service to you in your practice.
And like I say, Midge, earlier on, you know, it'd be great to get you back at some point and go into some more details. And I really appreciate you taking the time out today and sharing the information with us.
My pleasure, Gary, and it's great to meet you and to know more about what you do with your EFThub website. I wasn't aware of that, so it's great that I'm now part of it.
All right. So let's talk again very soon, yeah?
Sounds great. Looking forward to it.